expectations differ from what I've been told before. I lay my heart on paper. You can't buy my words, they're not for sale. Will you remember me when you don't see my face on magazine? Will you remember me when I'm gone? 'Cause I'm not Hollywood. Whoa, whoa. 'Cause I'm not Hollywood. Whoa, whoa. I'm not here 'cause someone gave me $1 million in a brand new car. I show stars and pieces on this life I live, the things I've done. I'm not here to tell your story. I'll never sing your songs. I'm not here so you can make me into something that I've never been before. I lay my heart on paper. You can't buy my soul. It's not for sale. Will you remember me when you don't see my face on a magazine? Will you remember me when I'm gone? 'Cause I'm not Hollywood, but my life's just a memory. Will anything I'm giving matter at all? Will you catch me when I fall? 'Cause I'm not Hollywood. Will you remember me when you don't see my face on a magazine? Will you remember me when I'm gone? 'Cause I'm not Hollywood, but my life's just a memory. Will anything I'm giving matter at all? Will you catch me when I fall? 'Cause I'm not Hollywood. Whoa, whoa. 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 'Cause I'm not Hollywood. Will you remember me when you don't see my face on a magazine? Will you remember me when I'm gone? Oh, 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 oh. Just waiting patiently on my hospital bed. Just waiting for the doctor to come back in. By then he falls asleep, wishing he was just as strong as everybody else. He just wants to live like everybody else. What if I believed? What if I prayed? If I did, would it make all this go away? Where did I go wrong? What didn't I do right? 'Cause I don't wanna have to say goodbye, 'cause I still believe.
Welcome everyone to the very first day of the Indie StarCraft Team League season number 3. And we have a great matchup for you guys today. I am Vindicare, and with me is Jay Mara. What is up, Jay Mara?
Not too much, man. Really excited to be here to start off the first day. It's been a lot of fun with the last season, so I don't know how you doing yourself, man.
I am doing absolutely fantastic. I cannot wait for season 3. Season number 2 was an absolute blast, and we are already ready to make season number 3 even better than that. We have Area 51 going up against Team Impulse, the host team of this tournament, in a best of 7 King of the Hill style clan war. And what can you tell us about these guys, Jay Morrow? Because I am too excited to even talk right now.
Well, let's start with Area 51 has 6 Grandmasters players, all in North America on the North American server. One of them at 34th. That's pretty intimidating all on its own. I've actually seen a lot of these players play in previous, and they've got some pretty good talent. So I think it's going to be a really tough battle for Impulse Esports. But in the past, we've seen them play pretty well, and they have some tricks up their sleeve as well. So I think it's going to be a pretty darn good day for StarCraft.
Yeah, Impulse is one of those teams that this is their home turf, and they are just absolutely willing to defend it. And starting out for them today, I think, is the Protoss player Niter. Niter is a rank number 2 Masters, or is he actually a Zerg player? I'm sorry, I was getting them mixed up.
He's a Zerg player, yeah.
He is a Zerg player. He's got a Protoss icon because he wants to be clever like that. He is a rank number 2 Masters Zerg, just underneath Optic Dream, as a matter of fact, in the very same division, with 686 wins and 604 losses. So a very competent player to open up with for Team Impulse.
Yeah, I think it's a very good decision to do. Of course, we've talked about last season, and I talk about every time I cast, whenever there's some sort of team leagues, it's very important to send out a very specific player for the first series.
And actually, Niter's actually playing Protoss, or at least he is right now in the lobby. Has he not changed to his correct race, or is he actually just going to be opening up with a Protoss versus Zerg? I mean, this is crazy, because if he's actually playing Protoss to open up this tournament, he's got to have something specific planned, because it does look like his most played race in the ladder is actually Zerg.
To be honest, what it might be, there's players in the past that have not liked mirror matchups, so what they'll do is they'll switch to a separate race for the mirror matchup. So in this case, he would have been playing as EVZ, whereas he's going to play as Protoss against Zerg. I believe that's what he's going to be doing here. Otherwise, it might be somebody else on his account. I don't know. That's the only thing that comes to my mind.
Well, that's definitely something I can be sympathetic with, Jay Mara. If you guys don't know me, I am a very avid fan of very particular matchups, and I don't like certain matchups, and CVZ is one of those matchups that I just absolutely cannot stand to play. It's the most frustrating, hair-wrenching matchup to play. It's I'm winning. Oh, a bad Baneling hit, and I've lost everything. And it's a crazy matchup, but it makes it so much fun to watch. But we are actually going to be seeing Protoss versus Zerg. It's going to be on Cloud Kingdom, and this has been one of those maps and one of those matchups where it has just been the battle of the standard versus standard on this map.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about a lot of casters. Usually within the first 5 to 10 minutes, I could cast it with my eyes closed, just because of how, I don't want to say standard, but that's the best word to describe it right now. And actually, I just received confirmation from Marine. Niter actually switched to Protoss about 6 months ago. So that is the reason why. And of course, it's calculated on your account based on how many times you've played that race. So he probably hasn't caught up to how high his numbers were on, playing as Zerg. So that's exactly why. But it looks like the timer has already started.
Indeed it has, Jay Morrow. I was already excited, but now I am just absolutely thrilled and stoked. This is the ISTL Season 3 for those of you just joining us. I am Vindicare, and with me is Jay Morrow, and we are getting the very first game loaded up right now. It will be a Protoss versus Zerg on WCS Cloud Kingdom.
Yes, it will be, guys, and we're actually jumping into the game right now. This is going to be, to start off the day, we're going to have a PVC between Niter and, I'm sorry, how would you say his name? Is it just Masan? Okay, so it is just Masan. With last season, I didn't want to butcher anybody's name. Apparently, people are very big sticklers about that, so don't want to step on anybody's toes, but we're just about into the first game, guys. I'm so excited to cast. I've been waiting for this all day.
Oh, just so have I, Jay Morrow. And here we go, starting things off. We have our Protoss player starting up in the top right position for Team Impulse. He is Niter.
And spawning down here in the bottom left corner, we do have Masan as our red Zerg down here in the bottom left corner of Cloud Kingdom. And just there's a confirmation from Niter just letting us know once again that he has actually switched over to playing Protoss. That's kind of an interesting decision to make. I think a lot of players contemplate that when they're going through a rough patch with their race, but I've never actually seen somebody do it and be successful. I mean, you look at TLO, for instance. I mean, he was a professional player who actually switched races, and I would say he's one of the more successful stories in that regard.
I think we've actually talked about this before, J. Morrow. For as much as you've always seen, as much as like complaints about like what race is good, what race isn't good, like you see like throughout the community, it's very rare that you actually see race switching going on at a very top, at the like one of the higher levels. You almost never see it at the professional scene. I mean, I think one of the only players I've seen pull it off like really successfully has been Bjorn. I mean, Bjorn switched from Protoss to Terran, but he's one of the very few people I've seen that actually do switch races like that.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point. I mean, we'll have to see if he is able to do anything here. I mean, I'm curious to see what his style would be. I would assume in most situations, if you switch races like that, he would more than likely play more of a standard style. He wouldn't like come over to the race and do some sort of all-in cheese every single game and try and do something funky.
It could be that way, but it also could be that because he was a Zerg player before, he's very familiar with the sorts of crazy things that Protoss can do that can catch him by surprise. So he might want to like be trying to utilize some of those builds, kind of really understanding the matchup from the other side. And that could definitely be Niter's strength in this matchup overall. It's like being as a former Zerg player, you definitely know what you don't like to face coming from the opposite side.
Yep, that's a really good point. I mean, I played Protoss at a master's level, and then I started playing Zerg, and it was interesting to see it from the other side. But actually, nice micro here from Hassan, doing a great job of microing both of his drones. He's going to get his hatchery down here without any further complications, not really delayed whatsoever. So very, very nicely done. Niter is going to be forced to go home, but back home he already did go for a Nexus first, which again we were talking about. This used to be when we saw this, it was very greedy on maps like this, but now it's just like run-of-the-mill daily type stuff.
It's one of those things that's like, it's so normal now that this is the early routine. You try and block my hatch with your probe, you get down your Nexus, I try and chase your probe away. Do you start with the early pylon and just make my life even more miserable as the Zerg player? I mean, it is the standard way to play Protoss versus Zerg, like just starting things off in the very first few minutes.
That is a very good point. Actually, what's interesting is Niter ran his probe down to the southeast corner. Masan actually saw it run by, so he knows the position of the probe. So he should be able to predict, that he might actually end up going for some sort of proxy. And look, there's some sort of cannon. The two Zerglings head right over there. He knows exactly where he saw the probe last. So he actually is going to be able to see the hatchery here, I believe. He should know the timing. Around 4:30 is when he should actually attempt to scout this third, just to make sure. Otherwise, the Zerg could be doing something a little bizarre.
And for our Protoss player, I think here he goes. He is starting up his gases at the 22 supply mark. This is like right around like the middle time. That's kind of like an in between like super economic heavy probe opening and a really super heavy gas tech opening. So from here he could go into things like +1 attack. He could go into robotics tech. What's really going to be the determining factor in where Niter's build is going to go from here is when he drops down his 3rd or 4th gas. That'll probably like be a little bit more indicative of things like Stargate play or something like that.
To be honest, on a map like this, what I've seen as of recent is players are either going for a quick robo, like you're talking about, or getting quick blink. And what they do with the quick blink is they'll actually take a 3rd base. And the way they can do it is actually they build a gateway wall at the top of the ramp heading into the natural. So they have that side walled off very nicely, and then they end up bringing the blink stalkers in between, and then they're able to take a quick 3rd comfortably. And there's our first signifier. We have the robotics facility. Look at the position of it too. That's very impressive.
Yeah, it is all the way in the back of the base. That's kind of an interesting decision for him to put it back there, because obviously that means that it's safer from things like Roach or Zergling run-bys, but it also means that if he's going to be attacked and he's going to be in a defensive position, it makes it that much longer for those Immortals to actually rally to a defensive front line. So I'm curious as to why Niter would choose to put that robotics facility back there. Is he trying to... It could be that he's just trying to hide it from the Overlords, kind of keep Masan guessing what kind of tech he's going to be going for right away, because he does already have all 4 gases down.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Notice the positioning of it and look at the aerial view for Masan. He would either have to run a Overlord up the right side, which would never make it, or he's going to have to drag the Overlord directly across from the western side of his Nexus and actually try and scout it. So either way, it's going to be very difficult. But in return, like you said, those units are going to take longer. They're going to have a much longer distance in order to get out across the field, especially an Observer.
Yeah. It is going to delay it's going to delay every single unit that's going to be coming out of that robotics facility. And he isn't even going for an observer, J. Morrow. He's just going to be starting straight off with that Immortal production. This is probably going to be indicative of the super standard Immortal Sentry push that we've been seeing so much of in the Protoss versus Zerg matchup recently.
You know, actually, that's very interesting. I don't understand why he would actually skip the Observer. I mean, yeah, it gets his Immortals out a little bit earlier, but he doesn't know anything about what Mason's doing. Mason, for all he knows, is doing a Baneling bust, and he's not going to have the appropriate units ready for it. I mean, look at his front wall. There's no Zealot there. Any sort of Zerg that's going to arrive, of course, speed is very, very far away, but Mason actually scouts, has his Overlord above there, sees the Chrono Boost being used on the gateway, sees that there's no defensive units here or nothing on Lograd, and what does he do? His Spire is already, or excuse me, his layer is already 3/4 of the way done.
He doesn't even have his very first sentry, J. Morrow. He is cutting a lot of corners right now. It's something that Wolf has actually been talking about a lot lately in the GSTL. Protoss players cutting that early sentry, cutting that early zealot, even in this point, cutting the observer. And if they get into a habit of doing this, if enough Protoss players do that, Zerg players can just start really taking advantage of that with things like Baneling Bust. And here we go from Niter. We have 7 additional gateways now in production, so this is going to be a very, very big timing attack. 8-gate Immortal. He will have 4. He's having 3 Immortals plus a Warp Prism coming out here. We might see some Warp Prism micro on top of all of this.
This is about 3 or 4 months ago is when this became really prevalent, and I see what he's doing now. The reason he did not build an Observer is because he doesn't care what Son is doing. His timing is early enough to hit before Mutalisk would become any sort of a threat, because Mason took a third base. So at this point, and look what Niter's doing now. He's actually building a pylon wall so that Mason cannot counterattack. That is the one critical thing about this build that makes it so challenging. Look at this, actually building up to 5 pylons. That's actually kind of interesting. His supply is going to open up very wide, and the Overlord does see everything coming. So there are 3 Immortals, a Shuttle, and 3 Sentries. Normally, you do have a much higher Sentry count, but my wonder is maybe Niter is actually going to try and do a little bit more of an awkward creative timing with this.
Well, he has a lot more sentries now, J. Morrow. He is up to 9 sentries. Those sentries don't have a lot of energy, though, because all the ones that were just warped in only have enough for a single force field. But with 3 Immortals already out on the field, this could be pretty bad for Mason unless he catches his army out in the open. Niter's being very, this is a very scary position for Niter, but now he is actually warping in the Stalker reinforcements that he needs to actually directly engage the Zerg army, and we might have an engagement over here at the right side of the map. The Zerglings are coming in from 2 different directions, but the Roaches do not have speed, so the Roaches are actually taking a long time to actually get into firing position, and the force fields are good enough that the Roaches are not going to be able to get a good firing position, and the Immortals are just going to carve up what's left, but a lot of force fields are used in that engagement.
Absolutely, and actually Mason engaged before his +1 armor was done, before speed is done. He's actually re-engaging here, target firing down one of the Immortals. A lot of Stalkers are being warped in. One of the Immortals does get targeted, and the second one is going to dip down here as well. But I think actually Mason is sacrificing too much here, not getting enough of the sentries here. There we go, starting to target fire. The last Immortal is in the back, but now Mason is forced to retreat. I feel like he should have waited as long as possible to engage on that. He got a little bit over-eager, and now actually Niter with another warp and a Stalker's coming up here. Is he chrono boosting his gateways? He is not. He's full Nexus energy, no chrono boost going off on those gateways. Should actually use, he has 200 energy right now. I feel like if he was able to get into the warp, and he would be able to push through this. There is no follow-up for this. He does not have any signifier of a third coming out. There is creep at his third. So this is going to be it for Niter. Niter throwing down a couple of nice force fields again. The Roaches are pushing forward. Of course, these Roaches do have +1 armor versus +1 attack against the Stalkers. Drones are being pulled, but it might be too little too late. I think Niter may have done it here.
I don't know about that, J. Morrow. It's still a really good firing position for all of those Roaches, and from so far from home, it's only that one single Warp Prism, and no Chrono Boost energy has been used on those Warp Gates. This is trading really, really even, and now all the Immortals are down, so this army is not going to be very cost-effective against those Roaches that are now on creep with so much additional mobility, and I don't know, it looks like Mason might be able to hold this. That secondary Warp, and I don't know if it'll be enough, but the bank, he does have enough of a bank still left over. He has not been missing his injects behind this. This is looking pretty good for Mason, but I don't know. Here comes Niter's additional forces, and this is so close.
Yeah, actually, Mason made the mistake of not targeting down the Warp Prism with his Queen, and the problem is now he's going to sacrifice not only his third, but his Macro Hatchery. A second Queen has been pulled down here, but I think Mason, look how much money Mason has currently. He has no more Larva available, so I think Niter might actually be in a pretty good spot. A nice force field is thrown down, starting to target fire the Roaches. Taking a look at the workers killed, 15 workers have been killed. A huge warping coming in of Stalkers, and Niter is looking to take the supply lead here, starting to target fire down the last few Roaches here. The Queens are starting to transfuse very, very nicely. Actually, not target fire down the Sentries. Sentries are still sitting in the back. Niter is actually falling back down to 70 supply. Actually, Mason actually pushing forward here, but oh no, it looks like Mason may have actually done it. The Roaches are pushing forward, targeting down the last couple Stalkers, and I think you're right, Mason's actually going to hold this.
He managed to target down the warp prism just as the warp gates were finished with their cooldown, so they could warp in another wave. That wave that would have been J Morrow might have been what would have broken the camel's back, but instead Masan holds. He did lose a lot of drones in all of that, but that was not one of those attacks that's going to be very easy for our Protoss player to transition out of. He is completely walled into his base right now. He can't even move out even if he wanted to. And I think the key to all that was just like you were pointing out, J Morrow, he was not chrono boosting those warp gates. He had enough money that he could have continued to warp in zealots at the very least, but instead our Berserk player has held. He is now continuing to make drones right now, 7 additional drones in production. That will put him up to over 65 drones, and he's looking really, really good from here. We should be seeing an infestation pit being dropped down any second now.
That's what I was going to say. I was waiting for it. He actually should have dropped it about 30-40 seconds ago, in my opinion, taking his 5th and 6th gas, or his, what would that be? That'd be 5th and 6th, yeah. So taking his 5th and 6th gas geyser. You definitely need to do that here. Niter is reconstructing additional armies, still not using his chrono boost. There we go, using 4 off the main nexus. But now look at his composition. It's just all zealots and a couple of immortals and sentries. So these roaches are going to be more of a terror than ever. If he had those fungal growths available, I think Son would easily defend the next push here. But I don't know, man. I actually think Niter stands a chance with the composition that Masan currently has.
Yeah, without infestors, that unit composition, that super heavy sentry unit composition that Masan has is actually really, really powerful. And look at him, he's now ferrying all those units down from the high ground. He wants to go for another attack. What I am a little curious though is if you know that this last attack is the last one you're going to be able to throw, why not add in a Colossus or two? Do you think
does he have robotics? Oh yeah, you meant like have it set up so that he could follow it up with this. Yeah, honestly, I think the appropriate follow-up would have been Blink. But he's going so heavy zealot right now. Even having charge would not be a bad idea. And we saw that last season. We saw the charge a lot, Archon timing. I mean, he's doing a good job using his resources. He's down to about 700 and 200, still full on his Nexus though. Could easily throw a couple of extra chrono boost out. Still with only +1, and again, the Overlord sees everything. He's going to be able to count that out. And of course, Masan is currently capped. His infestation pit has just started, but that is definitely not going to be applicable in this engagement.
Look at that army, J Morrow. That is the Zerg Swarm right now. He totally outnumbers Niter's forces, but Niter has a lot of additional force field energy this time, and that is a lot of zealots versus a very Zergling-heavy army. And here comes the engagement once again, but it does look like Masan's going to be getting in really close with those roaches. Those roaches are in firing position on all of those sentries and zealots, and the Zerglings have managed to get back in the flank, and this is not looking good for Niter. 85 supply versus 189. Masan's going to clean this up easily, and there's the GG.
Yeah, I mean, it was very, very close, like you were saying. I mean, you were expecting Masan to come out. I was expecting Niter to come out. I feel like with that additional warp in, he had the gas, he had the minerals to warp in. Even Stalkers or Zealots would have helped him out in that engagement. He really needed to kill off those Queens so that they weren't able to inject, but he just couldn't get to it. And it actually ended up costing them the game, it looks like, overall. But very nicely played from Niter. That was a little bit of an interesting twist on that robo timing with the Immortals and Sentry.
Yeah, it was a very... I like it overall. I really did like the timing of it. It was just the execution of it was not as well as the execution of Masan's defense. I mean, we could sit here and talk about mistakes that Niter may or may not have made, but the fact of the matter was Masan was able to hold that, and that was impressive enough even in itself. Shooting down that warp prism at the time that he did was absolutely perfect, because at that point Niter had invested so much into that push that even if he wanted to transition out of it, he was already so far behind his opponent. I mean, if Masan had maybe like shot down the warp prism immediately, that might have given Niter the time to be like, okay, I'm just going to sit back in my base. I have this really like strong defensive position. I can add Colossus into this mix and make a more powerful push a little bit later. But he had already committed to that push. Masan shut it down when it was at its strongest, and then from there he just rolled over his opponent.
Yeah, so, I mean, let's talk about the next game. I mean, you know, Niter's down 1 game. Looking at the map pool, we have Daybreak, Cloud Kingdom's already out. We have Entomb Valley, Shakira's Plateau, Ohana, Antigua Shipyard, Metropolis, and Whirlwind. I'm looking more close to Entomb Valley, but I mean, what's your opinion on his next map choice?
I mean, it really depends more on what race that our Team Impulse wants to be sending out next against this Zerg player. I'm not really sure at this point who Impulse has in mind. We could see Ender early, as a matter of fact. I mean, that sort of game right there, it was a tough game from both sides, and sending out a strong player right now to kind of make a statement for Team Impulse wouldn't be a bad idea, I think, but we could be seeing Ender a little bit later. We have a lot of other really powerful players that we could be sending out next. I don't know if we're going to be seeing another Protoss, though. We might actually see a ZVZ snipe. That's kind of what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot about it. I was casting best of threes yesterday, so that's right. It is, it's going to be the team event. So, I mean, as far as a coach perspective, it's one of those things where he could send Ender out to try and stop Masan from getting on a 2-kill streak. But the problem is then if Ender goes down, well, then morale is so high from, Area 51 gaming that it's like, it's hard to come back from something like that. So I think it's a very, very tough decision from Impulse's coach right now to make a call. I would not want to be in issues.
To be honest, I think the game 2 pick and the game 5 pick, are probably the two most important ones in the best of 7 setup. Sure. Right now, you really don't want to let your opposing team get off to that 2-kill streak, but how do you stop it? I don't know how. At this point, I mean, Impulse's lineup has changed so much from last season. I don't know how strong Niter is compared to some of the other players on the lineup, so I really couldn't say if they were opening with one of their strongest players or if they were opening kind of just testing the waters a little bit with Area 51. I really can't tell you. So at this point, I don't know what Impulse's coach really has in mind with the next setup. So we're going to get a good insight to that the moment that we see who he sends out next. Either way, though, we're already off to a good start. That was a really close game.
I agree.
Throughout that entire thing, you thought Niter was going to win. I thought Masan was barely going to hold. And then I was like, no, J Morrow's right. He's not going to hold. That Warpin's going to finish him off. But then the other wave of reinforcements came in. He shot down the Warp Prism. It was a really, really close. It doesn't get much closer than that in the Protoss versus Zerg matchup, especially with that Sentry Immortal push. And I've just been seeing so much of that lately. And it's kind of hard to tell, really. It's very rarely does it really come down to that close of an engagement. Usually the Zerg either completely shuts down the Protoss army or the Protoss just completely rolls over the Zerg with really beautiful force fields. It's very rare that you see the two sides trade that evenly for so long.
Yeah, I think Niter's timing was very interesting. I'm sure he practiced that a lot. I mean, he had 3 Immortals, he had a shuttle, and I mean, he knew exactly when he was going to go. He even had the pylon set up. He knew that there's a possibility of counterattacks. So he definitely had it well thought out. I mean, again, we talked about the small things that made a difference, but overall, I mean, I really like your point. It was very, very close. So, I mean, hopefully the rest of the games will be as close as that. I mean, looking at Impulse's roster, I mean, Niter, as far as rankings goes, he's 4th on the roster. So, I mean, that's pretty awesome. I mean, they have 3 players that are above him that could actually bring us as good of games, and even the players below him as well.
Definitely, for sure. And the thing is, the rosters are kind of hard to. It's really hard to accurately gauge the strength of all the players in respective matchups because you've got snipers, you've got guys like I said. I was fielding a ZVZ snipe. You've got guys that might be lower on the roster that just have spectacular Zerg versus Zerg. And we saw that last season when we saw Hyper sniping a Zerg player in game number 7. I mean, you see these sorts of things sometimes. I think it's a little bit less common with ZVZ. I think it's a little bit more common with Protoss versus Protoss, but it's definitely an option that they can go for. So I want to take this opportunity real quick to thank the sponsors that we have for this season. We do have, actually I don't have them in front of me. J-Mar, do you have the sponsors list in front of you? I don't know if they've changed from last season.
So to start off, guys, if you like the intro music that was played today, that was actually by Fourth Angel. That's Forth. Fourth Angel was the introduction music that came on today. So if you like it, check them out. It's fourthangel.com. Of course, Impulse Esports. If it wasn't for them, this wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. Vindicare, you would still be here, I would assume. But overall, this wouldn't be here, guys. So, of course, go to impulseesports.com. Give them a shout-out. Let them know. Just tweet at them. Say thank you. Let us know if there's anything you'd like to adjust about it. The new one, cybersports.net, is going to be the new one. That's of their website. It's cyber-sports.net. Go check out their website. They're another amazing sponsor that's helping us out this season. And then as well, we do have Vivid Arts. And so they're actually able to do banners for like Twitch and different things like that. So if you're streaming, if you need out-of-game overlays, anything like that, it's oh geez, I'm going to try and read this. It's at Insidia SC2. And then that's his Twitter. And then as well, his email is jason.pun, that's PUN, @gmail.com. So if you need any work done, if you're curious to see what he is actually going to be able to do for you, just send him an email, say, hey, thanks, I really liked what I saw. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to contact him as well.
And then finally, we have our last sponsor. He was here from last season, too. We have Max at max-studios.com. Thank you once again, Max, for supporting the ISTL. You are awesome. We have game number 2 just coming up in just a little while, but Impulse does look like they are taking their time with their next decision, but it is going to be on the map Daybreak, and I love the map Daybreak.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good map. A lot of players are going back and forth about it. I don't care anymore. I think it's a great map. It produces a lot of games. I honestly don't know statistics on it anymore since the metagame has shifted again. But there's Masan joining the lobby, so we know Masan is going to be playing again. But who is going to be his opponent? I'm just waiting in anticipation to see who joins the hot seat here.
And I'm actually being got a message right now. Just a little bit about Masan. He actually made the main stage twice at MLG Rally. He beat Daisuke 2-0, Suppy 2-1, Complexity Rise 2-0, and he lost to FXO ASD in the round of 9. He finished in the top 32, so definitely a very, very strong player. Where did Area 51 pick up this guy? This guy is such a badass. And it looks like I was right, Jay Morrow. It is going to be a Zerg versus Zerg snipe. This is one of those things that Impulse likes to do, although they're doing it on the map Daybreak, which is something I didn't expect at all.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting choice. I wonder what he is actually going to bring to the table with this. Maybe he has a specific, strategy in mind. Maybe he likes to do certain things. We'll have to see. Maybe he's going to cut corners and maybe go for like 2 base Mutalisk. Who knows? These players are much better than I am, so we'll have to see. It looks like he is ready, though. So actually, this is going to be a ZVZ. So it looks like Monk is he's played almost 500 games on ladder at 1,758 points. That's a lot of games to play overall. I mean, I could not do that. I'll be honest right now. I would never be able to play 500 games, and that's just in a season, right?
Hey, the man loves his StarCraft, and he will be loving to take that second victory, or that first victory, excuse me, in the second game for his team. But will he be able to do it? He's going up against a very powerful Zerg player from Team Area 51, but the map is loading up right now. It is going to be on WCS Daybreak, and here we go, spawning down here in the bottom left position. We have our red Zerg player from Team Area 51. He is Masan.
And spawning up here in the top right corner, we do have Impulse's Esports Monk as our blue Zerg. Of course, Impulse Esports is currently down 1 game, so coming up from an uphill battle here. And what I'm waiting to see is, are we going to see any cheese from Son? Because, of course, he is currently up 1 game. He can take risks like that. Will we see something that early in the season, or in this series? It's kind of hard to tell at this point, though.
I have a philosophical question for you, Jay Morrow. Can you cheese in ZVZ? Is there such thing as cheese in ZVZ?
You know, I was just going to say that actually because I was watching somebody play last night and they 10-pooled, and he said, and I said, oh, that's interesting. You try to cheese your opponent after he's up 1 game in a series, and he said, you know what? I don't consider it cheesing anymore because he does it macro-oriented. What he ends up doing is he gets the 8 Zerglings out and then follows it up with a Queen. He's able to get extra drones out and then expands as well. And he's actually able to get a higher drone count as long as he's able to kill off just a couple of units from his opponent. So, to be honest, in ZVZ, I don't know what would be considered cheese. Maybe pulling all your drones, doing a 6-pull with a spine crawler or something.
I think that's the only one I can really classify as a cheese these days in this matchup is the 6-pull drone spine crawler rush. That's really the only one. We do have a 13-pull going down from Masan, so that might be. Oh, and a gas also, so he's definitely going to be going for some early Baneling play by the looks of things. He could also be going for a lot of early Speedlings, but my gut tells me that this is going to be some Baneling Wars coming up from Masan, and Baneling Wars, yeah, if you've got the control for it, it's a beautiful opening in the Zerg versus Zerg matchup.
Yeah, 13 pool was pretty popular for a little while. I'm not sure what the point of it was. I mean, people told me it was a macro-oriented build. I didn't understand it. I think it's to get queens out a little bit earlier. I'm not sure, but I mean, he already has gas, so it's not like he's going to go for the heavy queen style in ZVZ. But at the same time, Monk has already dropped his hatchery on the low ground, and as well, he's getting gas. So, I mean, they're kind of aiming for the same goal, but there you go. Son already starting a queen immediately. So, I'm wondering if we are going to see Baneling Nest here, or if he's going to start speed. He's about 40 gas away. He still has 3 guys in his gas geyser as well.
You know what this opening really reminds me of? I just thought of this correlation right now. What Masan's doing is very similar to going for a Cloaked Banshee opening in Terran versus Terran. You know that your opponent's going to be going for that earlier expansion than you are, and they're going to be defending your Cloaked Banshee, but nonetheless, it's still a great opening because you could do a lot of damage with it, but even if you don't, you manage to establish a lot of early map control. You keep your opponent kind of in a defensive posture while you yourself expand. It's kind of like the best defense defense is a good offense mentality. For the Zerg versus Zerg matchup, it's the only difference here is that those Banelings are so effective at killing Zerglings, but it does look like Monk is going to be throwing down his Baneling nest before Masana even does it. So it does, and he has actually pulled all of his drones off of gas. So this is really just for an early speed opening. That was the other option I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, but Masan's is going to be just going for a lot of early speedlings, and this could actually be a defensive build that he's going for.
I definitely think Monk is going for a defensive build right now. The timing of the Baneling Nest along with the Spinecrawler are two signifiers to me that he is playing defensive. And I like your point about, is he actually going to get this Overlord too? That'd be pretty actually really, really important this early on. Wow, it looks like the Queen is going to get this Overlord. That's actually really, really huge right now because that will actually force a supply block off of Monk. Oh, actually, no, it looks like he timed down Overlord just in time for it. So very, very nicely done. They're actually 4 Banelings, and look at this, man. Monk is so disoriented right now. He's not sure what's going on, but actually he's got an appropriate read because look how many Zerglings are going across the map. There's 16 Zerglings on the field for Masan. Oh, wow. He blinded his opponent, too. He killed off the Overlord, and now Monk does not know this is coming. I mean, he has the appropriate defensive support. The Overlord does now see it, so it's going to come down to this Baneling micro. I'm actually really curious to see how he's going to do this. The Banelings are actually sitting on the ramp, so very nice positioning. It looks like the Banelings going to connect there. Actually, no, only 2 Zerglings do go down with that. Starting to split up the Zerglings a little bit. Very nicely done, actually forcing a detonate on one of them. Starting to target fire drones him. The Baneling goes off. Only 3 more Zerglings go down. Very nicely done by Monk. He's not overextending here. He's playing defensive, warping or bringing in a couple more Banelings. I really like this from Monk. I feel like he's definitely winning this engagement right now.
But behind this, Masan has been making nothing but drones. Meanwhile, Monk has been making nothing but combat units. That the worker advantage, even though Monk had that earlier hatchery, thanks in part to that Overlord being killed, and thanks in part also to this aggression that Masan's been throwing out, he is up to 27 workers versus 30 workers now to the 27 workers of his opponent, even though Monk went for that earlier hatchery, and Monk has actually been spending a lot of gas on those Banelings. Meanwhile, the only gas that's really been spent by Monk has been on that early speed.
Yeah, that's a very excellent point. Roachwarren has come down from Masan, and there we go. Monk just getting speed. So as you were talking about wasting a lot, or not wasting, but having to be forced to use that gas, he's actually got his speed much later. Look at that, just now starting. Masan, of course, done about a minute ago, and so this is a very interesting predicament. But look at Monk's positioning for his Banelings. He has one by the ramp in case of a run by, and then he has one in the mineral field. Do you see that one hiding there? Very, very beautiful positioning. I saw somebody do this yesterday, and it just works out perfectly because if they try and do a run by either way, they're going to end up losing a ton of units.
The big problem for Monk right now is how heavy Masan's tech is already getting. He already has the Roachwarren down. If he wanted to go for a Roach timing right now, there is no Roachwarren for Monk, but he's not going for a Roach timing. He's already started his lair. He's taking his 3rd gas at his natural expansion. He's going to be able to go up to Roach Infestor tech before his opponent even has his lair done. So this position that Masan's in is a really, really good one, and it's thanks in large part to that early map control that was established by those speedlings.
Yep, and I was wondering if he was going to go for a +1/1 timing with Roaches, but now that he's taking that 4th gas geyser, that makes me think that he's actually not going to, but it looks like he is going to take a 3rd here. So actually jumping to later stages of this game, the Overlord is going to scout it from Monk, so you'll be able to get a read on what his opponent is doing. And what's interesting from Masan, he actually built his lair in his natural.
I mean, the Overlord's getting a read on Masan's 3rd base, but is there really anything Monk can do about it right now? He's capped at supply right now, 68 supply. He doesn't have really the capacity to really move out on the map, and actually just got supply blocked again. I don't really know where that Queen managed to shoot down the Overlord. I think it was actually in Masan's main base,
that is correct.
Which doesn't really do anything for Monk because Masan's lair is at his natural, which is a pretty good decision by him at this stage in the game. Obviously, going for that lair early on at the natural expansion, it makes it pretty vulnerable to things like Zergling, Baneling run-bys and that sort of thing, but we're already past that stage in the game. We're going to be seeing almost nothing but Roaches and Infestors and maybe Hive units if the game goes any longer than this.
You know, Masan actually built his lair at his natural to hide it, because when Monk went to scout it with that Overlord, it actually got sniped by the 2 queens that were there. He does actually see the timing of the 3rd, of course, but I mean, that's not really going to come into play. And now Masan's a little bit blind. He's like, wait a minute, he doesn't have a lair yet? Until he shows those lair tech units, which here come the Roaches, they don't have speed yet. There's a changeling here from Monk, so it is actually going to see all these Roaches maneuvering across the map. Masan's +1 and speed are just about to finish around the same time of Monk. Infestation Pit is on the way. 5 additional Roaches, no Zerglings in production yet, so he's just building all Roaches. Heading over to the 3rd here, as some Zerglings do run by, but it looks like the majority of them are sacrificed to Monk.
The Roach count for Masson is a lot higher than his opponent. Speed's going to finish for Masson just a little bit earlier than his opponent, which could play a big part in the micro war of these roaches, but there are just too many roaches for Masson. Monk does not have enough units to actually push this back, but these reinforcements from the high ground might be what he needs. But the concave is better for Masson right now, but those queens are adding in the additional firepower. This is a pretty close engagement for both sides. It does look like Masson is taking an early lead in the roach count from these two sides, but additional reinforcements are coming down from both sides. But again, I really think that this higher roach count for Masson is going to allow him to take this third base out.
Yeah, honestly, I was hoping Masson would just target fire down the hatchery at this point because Monk's actually got a pretty decent army. They're trading pretty well. Of course, Masson does have the better position right now. He's actually got units coming from both sides. He's going to pincer in his opponent, kill off that last queen. Right now from Monk, we actually have one queen on the field with 3 hatcheries, so his larva count is going to dip very dramatically here. Masson's +1 armor is about to finish, and that will definitely help him in these engagements. And I think just his overpowering roach numbers might be a little bit too much for Monk. It looks like he does have a higher roach count here, but there are so many streaming across the map for Masson. Currently up 25 supply, so +2 weapons on halfway done and pathogen glands. So very nice follow-up from Masson here.
But right now, he's poked a hole in Monk's boat. Monk needs to quell the leaking before it gets any bigger, but there are more roaches coming in right now. He does not have the production because all those queens have been taken out. I don't know if he can continue to make roaches in the amount of numbers that Masson can make, even though he has to walk them across the map. The supply is 109 supply to 80. There is a single spine crawler on the field, but it is not down here at the third base where it is needed the most, and Monk's going to lose his hatchery for sure. It's just a matter of time. I don't think he can really hold it, not with the superior production of his opponent.
Yeah, I agree, but Masson really needs to target fire down this hatchery. He just keeps going after Monk's army. It's kind of making me nervous because I don't think he's going to kill it. I mean, if he actually backs off here, this is actually going to be very bad for him. He's letting his opponent build up here. I mean, he has a huge advantage up 30 supply right now, but he should definitely engage before his opponent is able to build a good number of roaches. And here we go, Masson actually jumping right on top of Monk. Monk actually not retreating this time. They are engaging. The spy crawler is unable to burrow because the Masson did block it with his roaches, and the last couple roaches do fall from Monk, so now there is a 30 supply advantage, and there we go. There's the GG from Monk.
Such a beautifully played game of ZVZ by Masson. I wish I could even begin to emulate the calculated nature of every single move that he made in that game. It was just he had the whole thing planned out in his head. I'm going to open with Zerglings. It's going to force him to make Banelings. Because he's making Banelings, he can't start his speed. Because he can't start his speed, I don't have to worry about Zergling aggression from him. I can start my Roachborn. I can take all my gases. I can go up to Lair. I'm always ahead of him in tech at every single turn. And it all played out that way because he was aggressive at the start. He didn't overcommit. It was just a very calculated decision by him to force his opponent into making certain decisions, and he was just always a step ahead of him. Masson is one of those players that, like, as much as I want to try and badmouth Zerg versus Zerg, it is such a great matchup if you know how to play it. And Masson is definitely one of those players that knows how to play ZVZ. So an attempted snipe by Team Impulse on Area 51. It didn't quite go over the way that they had planned it, and now Area 51 is up 2-0 in this best-of-7 series, and now Impulse is in a hole. Like, how do you come back from this? Like, do you hold off for that ace player, or do you just throw him out like immediately and just try to like go all for nothing? Try to make sure you avoid that 3-0 hole.
I honestly think Ender is going to be coming out next. I think it's, in my opinion, from Impulse's decision, I would send out Ender because you do not want that third win. That is, one step away from victory. You don't want to let that momentum build up. This is the perfect time to send Ender because regardless, win or loss, you're in a better position than you would be otherwise.